Bear encounter ends tragically. Hiker found dead in possible grizzly bear attack at Glacier National Park. A tragic incident has shaken visitors and officials at Glacier National Park after a missing male hiker was discovered dead in what authorities believe may have been a deadly bear encounter. Now let's explore the story in detail and uncover the facts on our AI
Today's
podcast.
deep dive. We're looking at something pretty sobering today that really shatters the illusion of our safe, curated world.
Yeah, it really does. We spend, the vast majority of our modern lives surrounded by engineered predictability.
Right. Paved roads, clear signs, climate-controlled rooms, all of that.
Exactly. We just expect our environments to be explicitly designed for our comfort. But walking into a massive national park is not like walking into a botanical garden.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when you step past that trailhead, you're entering a sprawling, unscripted wilderness where humans are, well, at the end of the day, we're just guests.
We really are.
And our mission for this deep dive is to examine the stark realities, the physical risks, and the vital safety dynamics of sharing these spaces with apex predators. We're going to use a tragic recent fatality on the Mount Brown Trail alongside historical park data to understand what it actually means to navigate bear country.
Which requires a fundamental shift in mindset. I mean, we seek out these magnificent parks precisely because of their pristine beauty. But the underlying reality of that beauty is an untamed ecosystem. Navigating it requires a conscious recognition that you're no longer at the top of the local food chain.
Right. So let's look at the specifics of what happened on the Mount Brown Trail. Search and rescue teams discovered a missing male hiker dead around noon on a Wednesday.
Deep inside the park, right?
Yeah, about 2.5 miles up a very rugged incline. But the most crucial detail from the initial reports is the location of the discovery. The body was found approximately 50 feet off the established hiking path.
Wow, okay. See, that 50-foot distance completely changes the risk profile of a hike.
How so?
Well, the established trails in these parks are compacted dirt, they're cleared of brush and heavily trafficked. They offer clear sight lines.
You can actually see what's coming.
Exactly. But the moment you step off that path, whether it is to, let someone pass, answer a call of nature, or navigate around a fallen tree, you are entering a totally different environment.
Right. And the environment context here is vital. Officials describe the specific area where he was found as a heavily wooded section filled with fallen timber.
Which is incredibly tough terrain.
Yeah, navigating a heavily wooded area covered in deadfall is essentially like walking through a natural soundproof maze. Your sightlines are slashed to almost zero by the dense trunks.
Oh, absolutely.
But here's what I don't quite get. I've always assumed a 500-pound animal would be incredibly clumsy and loud moving through the brush. How does a massive grizzly manage to surprise someone, even in fallen timber?
What's fascinating here is the intersection of bear anatomy and forest acoustics. We picture massive animals as lumbering and noisy, but bears have these heavily padded paws and a digitigrade walking style.
Wait, digitigrade?
Yeah, meaning they walk largely on their toes.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Right. They are evolutionarily designed to move silently, and then you combine that with the environment. Fallen timber and centuries of dropped pine needles act like literal acoustic foam.
So it's absorbing the noise.
Exactly. The uneven terrain scatters sound waves instead of bouncing them. The deadwood just absorbs the vibrations of their approach.
So the environment is literally stripping away your early warning system.
Yes. And it's restricting your physical movement, too. You can't quickly pivot, back away smoothly, or even look over your shoulder effectively when you're actively balancing over tangled logs.
That makes a lot of sense.
The physical environment entirely dictates the level of risk. In an open meadow, a hiker and an animal can spot each other from half a mile away, leaving plenty of time to assess and retreat.
But combine a solo hiker with poor visibility, muffled acoustics, and restricted movement.
And that buffer of time just vanishes.
It's a mutual surprise.
Yeah.
The bear doesn't know you're coming either until you are right on top of them. But in this scenario, one party is a highly defensive apex predator.
Exactly. That sudden close proximity surprise triggers an immediate instinctual defensive response. The injuries sustained by the victim were consistent with a bear encounter.
Which is just terrifying.
Yeah, it really is. In a space that tight, a bear doesn't posture or warn. It neutralizes what it perceives as an immediate threat to its personal space.
Which opens up a massive logistical nightmare for park authorities. Once a catastrophic event like this happens, the response isn't just about throwing up some yellow tape.
Far from it. Yeah.
They immediately closed the Mount Brown Trail and dispatched wildlife experts and law enforcement to investigate the area for signs of grizzly activity.
Mm.
They have to determine whether the animal involved still poses a threat to visitors.
Right.
But I mean, how do you even begin to investigate a 500-pound animal in a million acres of wilderness?
Well, it is a highly specialized, incredibly dangerous operation because they aren't just looking for any bear. They have to identify the specific bear.
Which sounds impossible.
It's tough. That means biologists are going into a dense, dangerous area to measure bite marks, track footprints, and even swab for genetic material left on the victim or the surrounding brush.
Wow, so it's like a full crime scene investigation.
Essentially, yes. They have to interpret the behavioral patterns from the scene to determine if this was a purely defensive reaction to being startled, or if it was, predatory behavior.
And while all of that complex biology and tracking is happening, there is a rigid procedural protocol in place for the human element.
Right, it's a 72-hour rule.
Exactly. The National Park Service stated the identity of the deceased hiker would be withheld for at least 72 hours after notifying the family members. That 72-hour window is so vital.
It really is.
We get hit with these sensational instant news alerts about bear attacks, and it's very easy to just abstract the tragedy. But that protocol exists to prevent a grieving family from finding out their loved one passed away via scanner traffic leak on social media.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you really see the immense dual responsibilities placed on park officials.
Yeah, they have a lot on their plate.
They do. They're mandated to preserve native wildlife, which requires protecting these massive predators. Simultaneously, they manage human safety for millions of annual visitors.
A tough balancing act.
Absolutely. When those two mandates violently collide, officials have to seamlessly transition into coordinating complex search and rescue logistics, securing a contaminated wilderness scene, and handling a profound human tragedy with total dignity.
It requires an unbelievable level of professionalism, especially considering they're doing this field work in the exact same dangerous, unpredictable terrain where the incident just happened.
Yeah, that takes serious nerve.
But looking at the historical data shifts the perspective on these events significantly. The records indicate that fatal bear attacks in Glacier National Park are actually extremely rare. Before this incident, the last deadly bear mauling in the park was back in 1998 in the Two Medicine Valley area.
Nearly 30 years.
Yeah.
3 decades between fatal incidents in a park that sees vast, continuous streams of outdoor enthusiasts. Statistically speaking, driving to the trailhead is orders of magnitude more dangerous than walking the trail.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If fatal attacks are so incredibly rare, literally decades apart, why do they completely dominate our collective fear of the woods so heavily? Like, why is a bear the very first thing you think of when you hear a twig snap in the forest?
It boils down to the availability heuristic in our psychology. We are hardwired to vividly remember and deeply fear the most catastrophic, visceral potential outcomes, regardless of their statistical probability.
This is more about the nature of the threat than the likelihood.
Exactly. A fatal encounter challenges our modern assumption that we sit comfortably at the top of the food chain. It's a deeply primal fear.
To understand the mechanics of how these encounters actually play out, we can look at a recent survival story from August 2025. A 34-year-old female hiker survived an encounter near Lake Janet.
That was a wild case.
It really was. The contrast between this and the Mount Brown fatality reveals exactly how the park's safety protocols function in reality. The scene was similar. The hiker and her companion were walking through dense brush, dealing with that restricted visibility. Suddenly, a medium-sized brown grizzly with 2 cubs charged toward them.
A mother grizzly with cubs in dense brush is universally considered the most volatile, dangerous scenario in bear country.
The absolute worst-case scenario.
Yeah, the maternal defensive instinct is absolute and immediate.
So the hiker attempted to escape by diving off the trail and covering her head, trying to physically protect her vital organs. The grizzly slashed her shoulder and arm. But this is where the scenario diverges from tragedy.
Right, because she wasn't alone.
Exactly. Her hiking partner quickly deployed bear spray, which forced the animal to retreat within seconds. Then they used an emergency inReach device to send an SOS alert.
Which was incredibly smart.
It saved her life. But I want to pause on the bear spray for a second because it's often talked about like a magic wand. How does a can of spray stop a charging animal that size?
It is entirely about weaponizing the bear's greatest evolutionary advantage against it. A bear's sense of smell is roughly 2,100 times stronger than a human's.
Wow, 2,100 times.
Yeah, Their entire world is processed through their olfactory system. Bear spray is a highly concentrated aerosol of capsaicin.
Like the chemical that makes chili peppers hot.
Exactly. When deployed correctly, it creates this expanding heavy cloud. When the bear hits that cloud, it inflames the capillaries in the eyes and violently swells the mucous membranes in their respiratory tract.
So it just completely overwhelms their system.
It literally forces the bear's brain to hit an emergency off switch on its attack drive. The animal transitions instantly from defense to sheer panic about its inability to breathe and see. It breaks the encounter.
And the second layer of defense for that hiker was the inReach device. For anyone unfamiliar, this isn't relying on cell service, which is, non-existent in deep wilderness.
Oh yeah, you get 0 bars out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It bypasses cellular networks entirely, pinging low Earth orbit satellites to send exact GPS coordinates directly to a dispatch center. That allowed for a coordinated, rapid rescue.
The differences between the fatal incident and this survival story are basically a masterclass in wilderness safety. The Lake Janet survivor had a hiking partner.
Right.
That partner had a bear spray accessible, not buried in a backpack, but actually ready to deploy, and they had the technology to call for help. It perfectly illustrates how safety tools, when understood and used correctly, provide critical layers of defense even under terrifying conditions.
Which naturally begs the question, what are the actual odds of running into one of these animals? The wildlife data gives us a very clear picture of the scale we're dealing with.
And it's a pretty impressive scale.
It is. Officials estimate there are around 1,000 bears inhabiting Glacier National Park, encompassing both black bears and grizzlies. As of 2023, approximately 300 of those are grizzly bears living inside the park boundaries.
300 apex predators concentrated within that specific geographical area is a very robust population. It means you are never truly alone out there.
So what does this all mean? 300 grizzlies, it sounds like an intimidating number, but let's put it in context for you. Glacier National Park is over 1 million acres.
It's massive.
Yeah. Imagine a massive, sprawling city the size of Los Angeles, but there are only 300 residents living in it. You could wander through those streets for years, decades even, and never cross paths with another soul.
Right, the vastness of the landscape dilutes the population.
But if you and one of those 300 residents happen to end up at the exact same grocery store aisle at the exact same time, the surprise is absolute.
And that rarity of encounters creates a false sense of security. I mean, you might hike for 20 years and never unclip your bear spray.
Right.
Which leads people to view the park's strict safety guidelines as mere suggestions rather than absolute necessities.
And the park authorities are relentless in communicating those guidelines. Carry bear spray, hike in groups, make continuous noise on the trails, stay alert, and strictly avoid closed areas.
They put it on every trailhead.
They really do. If we're being honest, how many hikers actually walk through the woods loudly clapping and yelling? People go to the woods for peace and quiet.
This raises an important question about how we prioritize our comfort over our safety. We lean heavily on the idea of bear spray. But carrying bear spray is not a magical, invisible shield.
Right, it doesn't prevent the encounter.
Exactly, it's a last resort. If you are deploying bear spray, your primary defenses have already failed.
Because the goal isn't to win a fight with a bear. The goal is to never be in the fight to begin with.
Exactly. The true primary defenses are entirely behavioral. They are the actions you take to ensure you never surprise an animal. As we saw on the Met Brown Trail, silence and isolation and poor visibility is a lethal combination.
So breaking that soundproof maze effect is your best tool.
Yes, absolutely.
And to be clear, making noise doesn't mean wearing a little jingle bell on your backpack. Park rangers often point out that bear bells just blend into the ambient sounds of the forest like birds or rustling leaves.
Yeah, a bear doesn't recognize a bell as a human threat. The ultimate deterrent is the human voice.
Just talking normally.
Calling out, clapping, talking loudly with your hiking partner. These acoustic signals travel ahead of you, letting the animal know exactly what you are, where you are, and that you are approaching.
And they generally want to avoid you, right?
Absolutely. A bear does not want to encounter you. Giving them an auditory warning at a safe distance gives them the opportunity to quietly slip away. You'll likely never even know they were there.
That's a comforting thought, actually.
Yeah.
But this deep dive really underscores a profound tension in how we interact with the natural world. We venture into places like Glacier National Park to experience the awe-inspiring, pristine beauty of the wild.
We want to escape the curated predictability of our cities.
We do. But incidents like the deeply tragic fatality on the Mount Brown Trail and the intense close call at Lake Janet serve as uncompromising reminders of what wild actually means. When we step past the trailhead, we are leaving our engineered safety behind.
We really are.
We are entering an untamed, shared habitat, governed by an entirely different set of rules.
It demands our humility. We are visitors in their living room. And building on the official reports we reviewed today, there's a lingering thought I want you to mull over.
Oh, what's that?
Well, the documentation noted that wildlife officials investigate these scenes to determine, and this is the exact bureaucratic phrasing, whether the animal involved still poses a threat to visitors.
Right, standard operational procedure.
It is. But I want you to ponder the philosophical dilemma hidden inside those words. When humans knowingly and willingly enter a wild habitat, a vast tract of land specifically protected so that apex predators can exist and act according to their raw nature, how do we objectively define when an animal crosses the line into being a threat?
That's a really heavy question.
If a bear is simply defending its personal space from what it perceives as an intruder, at what point does natural behavior become actionable danger?
That really is the ultimate tension of the national park system. Where is the line between our expectations of safety and the unyielding reality of the wild? Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope provides you with a new, highly tactical perspective the next time you pack your bags for the wilderness. Keep exploring, stay intensely curious, and please always stay alert out there on the trails.
Okay, one question for you. Could this tragic death inside Glacier National Park have been prevented if the hiker had carried bear spray or followed different safety precautions while trekking alone through grizzly territory? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.